But I'm telling you, it was not dead. It was only delayed. And I'm telling you, are you getting this? Are you applying this to your life yet? You're going to come full circle in a place where you thought that was dead, but it was only delayed. Every place the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, just as I promised Moses. I want us to look at this passage in Joshua 1 and look at the meaning and the significance of the biblical imagery so that we can get a sense really of what God is saying to us. So let's read, shall we? Joshua 1, we're going to read 1 to 6. And after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise and go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I'm giving to them, to the people of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, just as I promised Moses. From the wilderness to this Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to the great sea, toward the going down of the sun shall be your territory. Right there, see, boundaries, spheres of authority, yes? No man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. The magnitude of this promise in Joshua 1 is found in its timing. If we go back to Deuteronomy 32, which is just the book before, verse 49 to 52. That very day the Lord spoke to Moses, go up to this mountain of Abarim, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab opposite Jericho, and view the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the people of Israel for a possession, and die on the mountain which you go up, and be gathered to your people. Ouch! As Aaron your brother died in Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. We don't have to read on, that's good enough. You shall see, you broke faith, blah, blah, blah. For you shall see the land before you, but you shall not go there into the land that I am giving to the people Israel. Then Deuteronomy 34, 34 says, Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo opposite Jericho. So Moses died there, and they buried him, and they wept for 30 days. And then the days of weeping and mourning were over. Joshua 1, 1 and 2. And after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, the son of Nun, Moses' assistant, Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, arise and go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I'm giving to them, to the people of Israel. Listen, people, timing and circumstances, the surrounding, they all make a difference in how we interpret prophetic words and interpret prophetic scriptures and how we are to receive them and respond to them. So think about it. It's true for the release of movies, isn't it? Timing. It's true for the release of ministries. And it's true for the popping of the question. I was thinking about this the other day. Timing is really important. We have to look at the timing of this because even when you're going to pop the question, listen, I was a young girl once. Every girl knows that if you go out on a first date with some guy and they take you to some bar or some party and they get dead drunk and on the way home they're promising their fidelity and their great love for you and they ask you to marry you, probably it's not a defining moment in your life. Probably you need to tell him to go home and you need to go home and you need to say, and don't call me later. Just saying. But if a boy that you have been seeing has vowed and who has vowed that he would never ever get married, decides one day to take you to his favorite place in the mountains, hiking for the day, and then you find yourself sitting in his boyhood favorite place, his personal tree, and he looks you eye to eye and he says, I love you and I want to know if you'll spend the rest of your life with me. It probably is a defining moment, and I know that because that's how Mr. Maas proposed to me. And how you respond in that moment is going to make a difference for the rest of your entire life. And this is one of those moments. I mean, what's really going on here in this passage of Scripture in Joshua 1? It's a full circle moment. What does that mean? Full circle means you've completed a cycle and come back to the beginning. Sometimes it means returning to the original or similar position after a set of circumstances and changes that were terribly wrong or hard. See, the Israelites had been positioned here once before, hadn't they? Yes. And before going into the promised land, after all the miracles, after all the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire and the horse and rider thrown into the sea and all the things that they had seen, they send out the spies, and the spies come back with what? A bad report, and they fear and they continue to grumble, and the grumbling gets them stuck there, and in their grumbling then they rebel, and God considers it sin, and that was that, and the way closed. And they were refused from going into the promised land. The promised land, figuratively and prophetically, means the land of fulfillment, the fulfillment of prophetic promises. And they were turned back to the desert to wander and to die, that whole generation. See, the revival movement that began with a miraculous deliverance from Egypt, it failed to enter the fullness of the prophetic promise and inheritance. The mission from God that started in the wilderness journey, it was to be completed in the promised land, but it never was completed. But now they find themselves on the edge of fulfillment, back to the place where it once failed, back to the place where the way seemed closed, back to the place where the enemy seemed to win, back to the place where fear and intimidation ruled the day, back to the place where the door never opened, the way never opened, and entrance was denied and it was blocked. But I'm telling you, it was not dead, it was only delayed. And I'm telling you, are you getting this? Are you applying this to your life yet? You're going to come full circle in a place where you thought that was dead, but it was only delayed. And for whatever reason that it happened, God was taking that time and that delay to break off any curse that had come upon you and make you a different person. So when you came back to that new place, it would be a new time and it would be a new way. And even though it seems like the same old place, it's a new time and it's a new beginning and it's a fresh start and it's a whole new thing. It feels the same, but it's different. Remember, timing is everything. 40 years different. 40 years of wandering. 40 years of waiting. 40 years of following, seeming like you're going nowhere. Anybody can relate? 40 years, a time of testing. It's scriptural prophetic symbolism for a time of testing, but 40 years, it's also the timing of a generation. We are the generation standing at the edge of the fulfillment of promise. Long enough to cut off generational sin, long enough to receive the generational blessings. And Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness. And he overcame the devil and has overcome the world in every generational curse that could ever be sent your way. And I believe that we're all going to find ourselves in situations, circumstances that come full circle in this time. Missions, assignments that were not completed. Again, I'm repeating it over and over so you can hear it and so you can get it. Missions and assignments that were not completed. Prophetic promises that seemed to begin and then they were thwarted and the way was closed. Sometimes because of our failures, sometimes because of other failures, sometimes because there was sin in the camp and the church. That way is going to be reopened. Listen, I recognized in my own life just the other day that I had come full circle. I haven't even realized it. But many years ago, when I was very first in, I think it was in 1990. Well, it was probably 93, was around there. But when I received my calling, it was in a particular church in the town right next to my home where I live. I've lived in my house for 30 years. We've lived and raised our children in the same community. And I was in this particular church, and I received my calling there, and I began to come up in ministry, because I told the Lord, whatever door you open, I'll walk through, and he had already shown me, I'm going to take you around the world to preach and prophesy, and it was like, yeah, right, okay, yes, I want that, but in the meantime, I know there's a little bit of training that has to go on and preparation, because, I needed to read my Bible all the way through, that would be good. and I needed to be in some kind of ministry. So I knew what that was really all about, and to serve, because being a leader in the church is all about servanthood and serving the people of God. And so you have to be willing to serve somebody else's vision. You have to learn all about all of the things you need to learn about. So I started in this church. It was a little tiny church of just a couple hundred people. And I received my calling there, and I was on fire for the Lord. And I started, I told you, with children's ministry. Woo, I was glad that didn't last long. I think they were too. And so I started in children's ministry. Then I did women's ministry. And then I was on the women's council. Then I was on the church council, and then I was being asked to do leadership of every kind, and then I was asked to be the prayer director, the hired, paid prayer director and intercessor of the church, and raise up a prayer ministry. And pretty soon we have 3,500 people in the church, and we have like 4,000 on the weekends, and things were just gang banging. It was awesome. It was fun. It was so exciting. And I'm thinking, man, I'm on my way. Here we go. This is amazing. This is just going to happen now. And I'm doing all kinds of things I never thought I was doing. I finally, after 4 years, left my nursing career and let the license go and everything. And now I'm on staff. I'm being paid, and this is awesome. And we found out that the pastor had been having an affair for 2 years. And the whole thing came crashing down. And it released this ugly political spirit, and like this whole thing in the church. And everybody was against everybody, and everybody was suspicious of everybody. And that church came crashing down to, just like 600 people or something like that. And it went through a series of very difficult times, and I stayed for a long time as a part of that church for like 12 years. And then God called me out of there, and I went to another church, and I was a pastor in another church and all that kind of stuff. And so fast forward, I learned that from you today. All these years later, in 2013, I meet Randy Clark, and my life shifts and changed again completely. And now I am traveling all over the world and doing all those kinds of things that God told me that I was going to do. But he also took me out of the church that I was pastoring in. And for a while, was looking for a church. And so finally, somebody said, oh, you got to come and see this little church that we're going to. There's about 350 people or something like that. And it's a really good church, and I think that you will like it. Because I needed to go to a place where I could be a little bit less known. Do you know what I'm saying? So that I could go in and come out, but that I would be known to the pastor. So we went there. We loved it. Felt called there. Talked with the pastor. Had a meeting with the pastor. Have a great relationship with the pastor. He loves me. He's covering me. The staff prays for me when I go out. It's great. And then I find out that first church, do you remember I just told you about that first church where Phil? This is that church. But it moved, changed names, got another pastor after a series of very difficult events that had happened, and was in a different building. And so after all these years, I find myself in the original church where I received my calling. I would call that full circle. And so as soon as I realized that, I've been in this church for a little over a year. I decided I needed to meet with the pastor for another reason, because there is an assignment that I was never able to complete in that church, in my geographical area where God has planted me for 30 years. And I have always wanted to be involved in taking a city for Jesus. Same church, new season, full circle. Listen, Moses is dead. Moses was a great leader, but he could not take them in. Moses was a great leader, but he is now the past. Isaiah 43:18-19. Don't look to the former things. Behold, I am doing a new thing. Will you not perceive it? It is will you not receive it? Will you not prophetically see what I am doing and embrace it? Listen, when God does a new thing, there is only one right response and activity. Let go of the past and embrace the new. There isn't anything to go back to anyway, people of God. There's nothing we're staying for or retreating. It has no benefit for you to stay or to shrink back. Moving forward holds all the promise. Moses was a great leader, but Moses is dead. It's the moment of transition, a significant moment in the movement. In every time of transition in Scripture, you hear great words that's important to be listening. What is God about to do? Jesus, when he's about to leave, he gives a series of speeches to his disciples. Those are important for us to understand what he's saying and why he's saying. David did it. Solomon did it. They all did it. Abraham did it. Those are all very important things. Even significant historical movements in our culture. Listen, Martin Luther, when he did the 95 Theses on the wall, right? Winston Churchill, when he called in all the pleasure crafts to Dunkirk. Hey, and that was a prophetic movie, by the way. Do you know the prophetic import of that movie? I love movies. Oh, my goodness. The whole army was trapped by the enemy. The whole army. They had nobody left. And they were all like sitting ducks and going to die. And Churchill made this astounding call. And he called in the pleasure boats and the fisher boats and the civilians. Who's he calling in right now to the war that's going on? All those pleasure crafts and fishermen and civilians. Because the revival is not just for the leaders on the front line, those who have been called to full-time ministry. That's your job. No, it's all of us. It's time to get in your boat, cross the channel, and save some of our soldiers. Amen. Okay, so in this moment, Moses is dead. Now wait for it, wait for it, wait for it. What does he say? Now therefore go, arise, and go into the land. I'm giving it to you. 2 times he says the word give. 2 times giving, and it's in connection to the word promise. 2 times he says it. The Lord declares that everything, he has already given you the territory. Wherever you will have your faith, wherever you have the faith to put your foot down, he has already given you the territory. He gave it before. He didn't take it back. He didn't renege on his part of the deal. He's been waiting for you to be ready to step in. He's been waiting for you to come to a place prepared enough that he could release to you an increase of authority so that you could put your foot down and exercise your power and authority in the territory that he has already given to you. It's a divine decree, so it's irrevocable. Delayed but not deleted. There was failure but not nullification. But it will take faith to take it back. See, are you understanding what I'm actually saying? I have it written down here by bullet points, so I'll tell you what I'm actually trying to say to you, okay? Just in case you didn't get it before, I'm going to tell you now. Ready? Here it goes. Permission is granted to go in. It's yours for the taking. The gift and calling of the Lord on your life are irrevocable. They still belong to you, and you can pick them up, you can take them back, and you can pick up where you left off. What was not fulfilled or completed in your life in another season, God is going to open the way for you to complete that assignment and that mission in this season. The mission, though, will await your participation because you will have to seize the moment. Now, therefore, he says, arise and go. Now, therefore, know this. You're going to have to put your foot down. So we see that the power of the promise is found in the imagery. Joshua 1:3. Every place the sole of your foot will tread, I have given you just as I promised Moses. Why feet? What does it matter? This is key for this passage. It's pregnant with promise, pregnant with information, revelation. Have you ever heard the term squatter? Do you know what that is? You know, in California, that very interesting state, we have a law about something, and it's called adverse possession. I had to look it up because I knew what a squatter was, but I knew in California this goes on a lot. Adverse possession. Now, this is the politically correct way, and you need to be politically correct sometimes in my sphere of influence. Politically correct way of saying squatter's rights. So a squatter is someone who decides to take over a vacant and abandoned property without the owner's permission. And if the owner does nothing about it or is slow in doing something about it, sometimes they don't know for a time, right? The squatter can take legal ownership. And you know how they do it? They claim that they added to the land, that they actually paid for it because they moved in on the land. And see, they have upped the property value by creating a home there. I know it seems ridiculous to me too, but they say that they have improved the property. So the idea behind adverse possession, this is very interesting, was written in 1979 by the California Court of Appeals, and it basically says this, that land use has historically been favored over disuse. Therefore, he who occupies the land is preferred in the law over he who does not. Isn't that interesting? So, isn't that interesting? Yeah, so are you feeling that? Yeah, is it just me? In interpretation of biblical imagery, see, the sole of the foot is symbolic of dominion and authority over people and places. The biblical imagery here of things being under our feet is another image of authority. It's the action of a conqueror who has defeated his enemies. Kings, when they defeat other rulers, would place their feet on the neck of their defeated foe. Joshua 10, you can look it up, 1 Kings 5. The Bible uses this kind of imagery, when it prophesies of the day when our great enemy will finally and absolutely be defeated, when the Messiah comes. All authority and dominion will be given him, and all his enemies will be underneath his